Hi, and welcome to the third and final community session broadcasting live from NACFC. We're here today with several guests who are going to talk about how to get involved in clinical research and other types of research. We're really excited for the program today. First, we're going to hear from Dr. Deepika Pulaneni, who's going to talk about ways that you can learn more about what's happening in drug development research and how you can go find the most up-to-date information. Then we're going to hear from a research coordinator, Heather Hathorn, who's going to talk about ways that you can get involved in clinical trials. And last, we're going to hear from David Hansen, who's a father of 2 daughters with cystic fibrosis, who's going to talk about a really exciting new initiative that just launched today, where you can actually submit your own research questions and help drive what research priorities are happening. So I'm really excited to welcome our first guest, Dr. Deepika Pulaneni. She is a MD from the University of Kansas Medical Center. Deepika has been doing a lot of research. She's been involved in CF research for the past 8 years. She's done studies on genetic modifiers, and she's also been a principal investigator on several clinical trials. So, Deepika, welcome. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Thank you, Christina. It's really an honor to do this with you today.
So we are now in the final day of the conference, and I know we've been hearing a lot of really exciting stuff. Can you share what some of the most exciting things you've been hearing about are?
I think this has been an incredible conference. I want to encourage anyone who's tuning in right now to make sure that you take advantage of the sessions that were available through video streaming, including the plenary sessions, because I think that a lot of the exciting new research that's coming through the drug development pipeline was also featured in the plenaries. For example, the first plenary, there was a great deal of discussion from Dr. Mitch Drum about CRISPR-Cas9 capacity for gene editing and correcting the underlying defect in Cftr. And to me, that is absolutely one of the most exciting and promising potential therapies that is out there on the horizon right now. So if you check out that video, that's a great way to really learn more about that system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really exciting, not just in CF, but that's something that's exciting across the whole medical community.
Absolutely.
And but it's something that's quite a few years down the road.
Yes.
So I think it would be awesome to talk a little bit more about some of the things that are in clinical trials right now and some of the developments that are happening that people can learn more about right now. So we have on the screen the drug development pipeline, which is a resource that people can use in the community to find out the most up-to-date information about what drugs are in development. So from those of you who are interested in learning about this resource, you can find this at cff.org. cff.org/pipeline is the URL to get to the pipeline. And within the pipeline, there's lots of resources. You can learn more about each of the different categories by clicking on them and finding basic information. There's also videos in there where you can learn about how the different drugs work, and also click into each of the drugs to get more information about clinical trials that are available for each of them. But I think it would be great just to kind of walk through some of the developments in the pipeline and why these different types of therapies are important. So one of the first categories that we hear a lot of discussion about, both here and I'm sure in clinic you hear lots of questions about, is the drugs to restore CFTR function. So can you talk a little bit about this category and why it's important and what's happening?
Sure. It's been an absolutely thrilling chapter in CF history with the approval of drugs like Kalydeco and Orkambi that are already working at correcting the underlying defect in CFTR. And now we've had the recent very exciting news that Orkambi has also been extended in its FDA approval for treatment of children with CF who are 6 to 11 years old. But it's also really great to know, and as you can see on the pipeline, that there are a number of other CFTR therapeutics that are aimed towards restoring CFTR function that are in different stages of clinical trials right now. And some of those are targeted towards actually correcting the defect in the RNA itself. There are also other drugs that are coming out that look like they're very promising, including next generation correctors. And as we saw actually in one of the plenary sessions also, those are actually showing improved benefit over what's currently existing with increase in improvement in sweat chloride and improvement in lung function.
Yeah, that data was really exciting that we heard about in the second plenary. So we can move on to the next category and talk a little bit about, I think there's lots of excitement about those drugs to treat the underlying cause of cystic fibrosis, but other drugs are still really important in the treatment and care for people that have cystic fibrosis. Can you talk a little bit about why we still need some of these other categories?
Sure. One of the important things to actually think about as we talk about that is that the improvement in health that we see in the use of Orkambi was actually studied while patients were continuing to do their therapies that were pre-existing as well. And so this actually really drives home the point that even as far as we know right now, in the context of taking CFTR correctors, it's extremely important for patients to continue their other therapies. And that's because CF is affecting the lungs in a number of ways. So many patients are already familiar with drugs like Pulmozyme or hypertonic saline, and you can see here on the screen that those are obviously drugs that have made it through trials to patients. But there are additional therapies that are actually being explored in the pipeline right now too that are also aimed at improving mucociliary clearance or improving the way that the cilia or brush on the cells are able to move the thick mucus out of the way and get that out of the lungs. Inhaled mannitol is another one that is targeted towards improving mucociliary clearance by trying to decrease the thickness of the mucus. And there are additional drugs that are in trials here to try to improve the liquid restoration of that surface layer.
Yeah, really exciting new developments in that area as well. So next we are moving into some other categories. We have anti-inflammatory, and there's lots of new developments in this space. Can you talk a little bit about why anti-inflammation is an issue in people with CF and why these drugs are important?
So simply put, when a patient has cystic fibrosis and there is chronic infection in the lung, having an inflammatory response is good to the level of being able to fight against the infection that's existing there. But a hyperinflammatory response may actually be causing premature lung destruction or scarring. So basically, there are several trials that are coming through the pipeline to look at trying to mitigate that or have an appropriate level of inflammatory response. And so ibuprofen, as you can see here, is already one that has clearly been approved and has been shown to have efficacy in CF, but it's also very difficult to tolerate for many patients. And so there are a number of other drugs that are actually in phase 2 studies right now, and actually some that are coming into that that are also aimed towards treating inflammation in the lungs through either working through antibodies or working through a number of mechanisms to try to decrease the inflammation that is existing.
Yeah. Interesting. So for those of you who are just joining us, we are broadcasting live from NACFC, and we're talking to Dr. Deepika Pulaneni about some of the drugs that are in the drug development pipeline. You can ask questions in the feed below, and at the end of the session, we'll have some time to field some questions from the audience. So the next category that we have on the pipeline is anti-infective, and I think a lot of people watching probably have experienced different infections. And so can you talk a little bit about what's in this space and why this is still really important to address?
Sure. So as we've been talking about at the plenary, one of the most exciting things about CF right now is that patients are living longer with CF. More than 50% of the population with cystic fibrosis is in the adult range of life now. And that is just a phenomenal victory for the CF community. I think that one of the difficult things that actually comes with that is that bugs are also staying there longer with patients too. And so bugs are very smart, and they figure out how to work their way around a lot of the antibiotics that we already have or that a patient has known and seen. So it's critically important to come up with new ways to try to kill the microorganisms or new antibiotics that bugs have not previously been exposed to, especially as we start to see more multi-drug resistant organisms.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff to see so many new drugs coming into play there. And then the last category we have is the nutritional GI therapy.
So weight and height are extremely important in childhood, as is BMI in the adult range in terms of preserving lung function, and has very good correlation with lung function as well as the ability to combat infection. So taking your enzymes is critically important, but we also have new trials to look at some of the ways that we may be able to modulate, in fact, even inflammation, as an example with the glutathione study, that are coming down the pipeline for nutritional and GI studies.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the questions that we definitely get a lot at the foundation is about what's being done for people with rare mutations.
Absolutely.
And how can people that have a rare mutation that's not the Delta F508 or that don't have 2 copies of that, how can they find out more about what's in development for them?
Absolutely. So I think that this is a question that everybody in the CF community is very passionate about, and it's important to remember that the CF Foundation's position is that we're not done until there's a cure for everyone. So if you are a patient with a rare mutation, there are several things to consider. Adalurin is a drug that is under study right now to be able to look at mutations, or for patients that have stop mutations. There are also a number of drugs that are under investigation at the new CFFT laboratories, which is specifically focused on looking at rare mutations for patients with CF. It's important to talk to your care team. There's also the Clinical Trials Finder that's new and available through the website also. And I've played with that a little bit. It's incredibly impressive. So it's very important to use those resources with your care team and with information that's available through the CFF to find out what options are also there for you in the event that you have a rare mutation. Lastly, we were talking about the fact that for those therapies that we do see right now that are targeted towards improving existing or restoring CFTR function, it's critically important to continue existing therapies. Those therapies that are being prescribed to you are there, and they are FDA approved because they did show benefit in lung function and they did show improvement in health. So if you are waiting for that personalized treatment for your mutation, please don't stop doing your therapies that are existing in the meanwhile.
Right. It's really important to keep your lungs as healthy as possible.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the main challenges that you see? I mean, this is all really exciting stuff, but there's still, CF is a really awful disease and it's very hard to live with. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you see with your patients?
We talk a lot about how exciting it is that patients are living longer and that we have a more adult population, and these are all really wonderful things, but I can only imagine what a challenge it is to continue keeping up all of those treatments. And so I think that, we really recognize that as CF providers, as CF providers and at the foundation. And so there are a number of efforts that are really underway, such as the Success with Therapies research program, which is embarking on trials to help understand how we can help patients stick to really difficult and complex treatment regimens. And so we want to learn more from patients about how we can look at different interventions that can actually help patients keep up with that. Also, living longer with this disease is very difficult and can also lead to anxiety or depression. And so the CF Foundation has been incredibly supportive of care centers everywhere. So reach out to your care center and find out if by chance you are one of 80 centers that has already received support to have a mental health coordinator in your care center, perhaps a social worker or a psychologist that's there to work with you and help you through those difficult additional illnesses really that can accompany CF. And there are actually going to be 50 more care centers, as I understand, that will also receive mental health coordinator support. So
That's really great.
Although it's challenging, I think it's incredible that the CF Foundation recognizes this and is really putting resources into helping to research and support patients through this.
Yeah, really important. And so I understand that you have been a leader in the STRC, the creation of this research network to help address some of those issues of being able to take all the medications. And there's some more information about that on cff.org, I think, that just got built. So that's really great. I think we have some time now to take questions from the audience. So it looks like we have a question about how to find out what drugs are in development for my specific mutation. So we talked about this a little bit, but I understand there's another resource where people can learn more about their mutation. That's you can go to cff.org and also...
So a few other ways that you can also, and I hope that you'll be able to talk about the Trials Finder and cff.org more also, but clinicaltrials.gov is certainly one avenue to check out. But if you are really learning more about your mutation specifically, CFTR2 is a wonderful website to be able to visit and learn more about your specific mutation. I think the question was related to actual drug trials that are related towards a specific mutation, in which case my limited experience so far using the Trial Finder has been really helpful for that. And so
Yeah, and so on the Trial Finder, we'll talk about this a little bit more later with Heather, but you can actually enter in your specific mutation in the search box. But right now you can search for Delta F508, or if you have 1 or 2 copies of that, or no copies at all. So it is a great resource, especially to start. And then I think, as you mentioned earlier, always talk to your care team.
Absolutely.
So again, for those of you who are just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Deepika Pulaneni, and we're using the drug development pipeline. You can find the pipeline by going to cff.org/pipeline. And there's lots of great information here. You can click into the different drugs to find out what clinical trials are happening there and what the status of those are, and also find educational videos and content as well. So I think now it's been so great to have you here, Deepika, and I've learned a lot from you, and I'm really excited to see what comes in the next year. And we're going to switch now and talk to Heather Hathorn, who is a research coordinator and operational manager at the University of Alabama. Heather has been doing CF research now for 14 years, and she's worked on over 50 trials. So she has been really involved in CF research and seen so much development over the last 14 years, and we're really excited to have her here to learn more about how to get involved in clinical trials. Again, please remember to ask questions in the feed below, and we'll have some time to take those questions at the end of the session. So Heather, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So you have seen so much development in the last 14 years. Can you talk a little bit about some of the exciting things you've seen happen?
It's really been just an honor to be a part of the CF community, and we have seen research just really change over the last 14 years. I remember when I very first started working in research, we were treating the symptoms, and it was just we were always chasing, and trying to fight and treat the symptoms, and now we're really starting to treat the basic defect, and it's just really awesome. It's been a great journey.
I'm sure, have you seen patients get really more and more excited about
more
research?
and more excited, and it just seems like the community at large is really excited, and there's been a great interest in participation, so it's really exciting times.
That's awesome. So I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about why it's important for people who have CF to participate in clinical trials.
So a clinical trial is the only way, really, that we can advance treatments for patients with cystic fibrosis. And so for us to do research trials, we have to have patients to participate. And so really, our patients are the key. And so it's so important for them, to participate so that we can advance these treatments for patients with CF. And patients participate for a lot of different reasons, and those are all very great reasons. It may be to be a part of the CF community, the scientific community. It may be to help others or help themselves or develop relationships with the research team. A lot of different reasons, and they're all very important.
And I think one of the questions that we get a lot is there risk in participating in clinical trials, and how's that addressed?
There, absolutely, there's risk. There's always things we don't know in research, but we do our due diligence as a research community to put the patient's safety, at the foremost. And we do a lot in years of research in our labs to minimize those risks. So before we ever take drugs to patients, we've done a lot of research in the labs to understand exactly how the drug works and what the risks are, and that really minimizes those risks. And then when we take the drugs to the patients, there's a whole community in the background that the patients don't see that are monitoring, a group of doctors and scientists that monitor side effects and labs and what's going on with the patient, so that we can really keep a close tab on those side effects and minimize risk as much as possible.
Yeah, for those in the audience, if you're interested in learning more about that, there's a resource on cff.org where you can learn a little bit more about what's done to protect safety. I think it'd be good to talk about some of the basics about participating in a clinical trial that people might not know. So if somebody expresses interest in participating and they sign up for a study, can they withdraw if they decide they no longer want to participate?
Sure, absolutely. Research is always voluntary. So at any point you decide you don't want to participate for whatever reason, you can withdraw, and there's never a penalty for that. So we support patients whether they want to participate or withdraw from our research.
Okay, yeah, I think that's important to know. And one of the other questions we've gotten is if it's free to participate, are people compensated for participating in research?
Sure, I think it's important for us to remember that patients may incur costs to participating in research, and that may be travel, that may be time off from work, vacation time, that may be childcare expenses that they may incur, and so we do compensate patients for their time to help cover those costs. And so there's guidelines, that we follow, and we always want to try and be respectful of their time and realize that they have expenses to participating, so we want to reimburse them for those, for their time.
Yeah. So if somebody is hearing this and they're thinking, I'm kind of interested in participating, what are some of the first steps that they should take?
Well, I think the very first thing you should always do is speak with your clinical care team, and they should be your first point of contact. They should have information and can help you to know how to move forward if you have an interest, and then you can always use the clinical trial finder on the CFF website. It's a great tool.
Yeah, so this was just launched in the end of July of this year. And so the website to find the clinical trial finder is cff.org/finder. And we have it pulled up on the screen here, and I'll just show users really quickly, and then we can talk about some of the practical things in using this. In the clinical trial finder, the homepage has some key filter criteria on the left, and then trials are listed on the right-hand side with some basic information about them. And you can search by the therapeutic approach. So we just talked to Dr. Polanani about all of the different categories in the pipeline. So you can search by those categories, some basic mutation categories. And I think before we actually dive into looking at some of these trials, can you talk a little bit about the eligibility criteria and why studies have specific criteria for participation?
So we have that criteria, and you may see it listed or referred to as inclusion, exclusion criteria. And basically what that is it's a set of demographics, if you will, that we want to try and use so that the patients that enroll in the studies are as much alike as possible. And that's important because we want to be really sure that when we get results that either, what happened, whether it was good or whether it was bad, was due to the drug under study and not a lot of other variables that we couldn't, that were so different from patient to patient. So you may see things like age criteria, you may see genotype, you may see age, you may see, lung disease, like if mild, moderate, or severe. You may see infection limitations, if you have Pseudomonas, if you don't, or we want patients to be on similar drugs, not take certain drugs or do take certain drugs. And so that's why that's all very important, is so that the population can be as much alike as possible.
Yeah, in the plenary we heard today about how clinical trials we're going to hear about a little bit later in this session is what's happening in the day-to-day. So let's click in. I'm going to do a little bit of a filtering here so we can search for enrolling clinical trials, and I've added you're from Alabama, so I put in an Alabama zip code, and let's say we're looking for somebody who's 20 years of age, and we apply this filter. We'll get to see what clinical studies are happening that are enrolling for clinical trials that meet those criteria. So if we click into a study, we'll get a little bit more information about the study, a description of the study, some of the basic elements of study design, and then additional information, and we'll see all of the sites that are doing the study, so we can see that this study is being done at a lot of different places. And I think one question that I have is if somebody finds a study but it's not being done at their home center and they want to participate, can they participate in a study if it's not at their care center?
Absolutely, and we can work with you to, try to help you find a center that's closest to you, or if we were that center, we'll work with you to get all of your records to us, and we'll talk you through that process, and that can be sometimes burdensome for patients, but we'll help you with that. And there's also programs that most sponsors have in place to help with travel, like plane tickets or bus or whatever it may be, to help patients go across state lines and participate in studies that their center may not have.
Yeah, I think that's so important to know, and especially with these trials that are being done for people that have rare mutations, and a lot of people are going to have to try out travel to be in those, so it's important to know that there is help.
There
to
is,
do so.
that's right.
So say somebody's interested in participating in this trial, we have this participate button, which takes you to a form where they can actually reach out to people like yourself that are on the other end. They're the research coordinators doing all the work for the study. So if you are interested in participating in a clinical trial, you can fill out this information and then preview the message, and it'll take you, it'll populate an email that goes to research coordinators. So we have Heather Hathorn with us right now, and so you are the person on the other end receiving these emails. Can you talk us through what that process is once you get an email?
Sure. So when I get the email, I usually, all the emails come to me and I send them to the coordinator who's responsible for that study. And we're always going to try and get back in touch with the family and just talk to you about your interest and some very general criteria and work with you to get your records to our site. And that's really the first step, is to sign the release and get your records sent to us so that we can really make sure that you're eligible before you spend a lot of time, coming and investing time in a study that you're not eligible for. If you're not eligible for that study, we'll always work with you to talk through studies that we may have or other sites may have that you are eligible for. But the first step is getting your records, and that can be burdensome. We usually need at least 1 year of medical records, but we'll take that burden off the patient and we'll work with their center to get the records sent to us, and then we'll just start talking through those records when we get them. There'll be a lot of phone calls and we'll set up appointments. We'll work with you, your schedule. Make all of that as easy for the patient as possible and set up the screening visit and go from there.
Yeah, it's an exciting process. So if a person is traveling for a site, and will you work with their home care team and talk to their care team about what's happening?
And we'll get, work with them to get the records, and we'll talk to them about their, just take as much of the burden off the patient as possible and make those communications directly to their care team so that the patient will feel as comfortable with us as they do with their own care team. So we'll really try and work together and join their care team in doing the research at our center.
I think one of the questions we've gotten before was if somebody is participating in a research study and they have a lot of study visits, can they replace some of their regular clinic visits with research visits? Is that something that's possible?
Well, I think it's site-specific, right? And it's patient-specific. And I think it's always important to talk to your research team and your clinical team and see if that can be a possibility for you. I think it really is taken on and the decision is made on a case-by-case basis. But if that is something you're interested in, it's always worth bringing that up and seeing, if that could be something that could be done for you and kind of eliminate so many trips or so many visits.
Yeah. So if somebody's participated in a trial or more about the results of trials, I just wanted to point out that they can find those results, and probably the first place to go is your care team.
That's right.
But you can also use the clinical trial finder to find completed results as well. And I just wanted to show the audience, again, if you're looking for the study results, you can click in and get a high-level summary and then talk to people like Heather or your care team about what those results mean. So just another thing that I think is important to know, that's a resource available to the community. So now I think we have some time to take questions from the audience. So this is a great question that came in. Can somebody stay on the drug after the study is over?
So that is a very good question. And it depends on the study and the phase that the study is in. And if there is a rollover and an extension arm, in most cases, unfortunately, the answer is no. And when the study is over, we gather up the return drug and we collect all the data and we move to the next phase. But in some cases, some studies do have extension arms or rollover arms. And so if you get in a clinical trial and that phase ends, you can stay on the drug by rolling over into the next phase. So that's a really good opportunity for patients. So it really just depends on the study and the phase of the drug that the study is in.
Yeah, that's good to know. Looks like we have another question coming from the audience. What are the chances I'll get a placebo?
So that's a risk, right? But it's a very good question. And so all studies are different. Sometimes it's a 3-to-1 randomization. Sometimes it's a 2-to-1.
So if it's a 3-to-1 randomization, what does that mean?
Well, like we'll say if it was a 1-to-1 randomization, it may be 50% chance. They're like flipping a coin, heads or tail, and so maybe you'll have a 75% chance, and maybe the placebo arm will be less, fewer patients. So you have a really good probability of being on drug, or maybe it's half and half, and so, but that placebo arm is so important so that we can really detect those changes. So it depends on how the study is designed, but there is always a risk.
And you find out that information during the consent process when you're initially talking to patients.
Then we tell the patients, this is your chance of getting on drug or placebo, and this is how the study is designed, and so these are your chances, and we explain all of that.
Awesome. So we have one more question. What if I have a rare mutation? Are there trials?
So it depends on what that mutation is, and we're expanding. I think it was mentioned in one of the plenaries that there's over 50 clinical trials now going on, and so we're really excited that the clinical trials are expanding to patients with rare mutations. So I think your best way of answering that question is to use the in your rare mutation. But I think if there is not one now, there will be one. And we're very excited about that.
Yeah, for those of you that are wanting to use a clinical trial finder for rare mutations, you can search for them in the search box, and then it would be all of the mutations would be listed in the other eligibility criteria. So you'll have to click into the study and scroll down to get that information, but you can enter your mutation here. And then I think always talking to your care team, because they really will know best. How will my safety be protected in a clinical trial?
So I think it's really important, as I mentioned before, when someone enters or enrolls in a study, their safety is our number one priority. And so we're going to do everything that we can. The CF community at large and our network, they're just great investigators and scientists, and we're always going to put patient safety first. But I think it goes back to that extensive work that we do in our laboratories to test these drugs and understand how they work so that we minimize those risks in the background, before the patient ever enrolls in this study. And we're going to have this constant monitoring. We're going to draw blood. We're going to, sample urine. We're going to do EKGs. We're going to do PFT tests. And we're going to measure lung function. We're going to do a lot of things through the study to just, make sure that everything is going okay and that the patient's safety is, always number one.
Yeah, and I think, it's important to know how many different bodies there are looking out for patient safety. So you have the regulatory bodies, you have the institutional review boards that review every single study that goes through a center, and there's a CF data safety monitoring board that monitors every study in real time.
But I think that's why sometimes there's so many visits, right? It's not just to give you drug and to, swap, you bring me back what you've used and I give you new drug. It's to do an EKG and let's see how your heart is. Let's make sure you're not experiencing any side effects. Let's measure your lung function. Those are all those visits are all incorporated. Everything goes back to safety.
Yeah, so important. We have another question. How can I send an application from outside the U.S.?
Yeah, I think you should be able to use the trial finder. That should work, right?
Okay.
So you would just, we've worked with centers outside of the U.S. We've had patients come to Alabama from Europe, and it's been, maybe a little bit more time-consuming and complicated, but it's still very easily done. And so if you can just go on this, the Foundation's website, contact us, and we will work with your care center, even if you are outside of the U.S.
Oh, that's incredible. I actually didn't realize that. And we heard yesterday that from somebody in Europe talking about all of the clinical trials going on in Europe and Australia as well. So it really is a worldwide effort.
That's right.
It looks like we have another question. Do I have to stop school or my job to be in a trial?
We will work with patients the best that we can so that they don't miss, school or as little as work as possible. Some visits can be long, and some visits can't be done on the weekends only because of shipping. We're going to draw a lot of blood and collect a lot of samples, and it's not that our team doesn't want to be available, it's that we can't get those specimens shipped out on a Saturday. And sometimes we can, and if we can do that, then we'll schedule visits on Saturdays so that patients don't have to miss school or work. But if we can't and they have to be done during the week, we'll work with you to maybe do afternoons or late afternoons, or bring you in at 5 or 4. I mean, we'll do whatever we can, because we realize it's a lot to ask of patients, and to miss that much work in school is burdensome, and so we'll really do our best to minimize as much of that as possible.
Yeah, I think that's so great to know. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Thank you so much,
Sure,
Heather,
thank
for
you.
taking the time to be with us. It sounds like we got a lot of great questions from the audience. People are really excited about this. Again, for those of you that are watching, please check out the Clinical Trial Finder. You can find that at cff.org/finder. This is a great resource to see all of the work that's being done in clinical trials. And as Heather mentioned, we have over 50 clinical trials happening this year. So a great resource to learn more about what's going on in the community. So our next session is with David Hansen, and we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk not about the drug development research, but research that is different. David is going to talk to us about a new project that just launched called the CF Registry Research Project, which is a really exciting new project that allows people to get involved in CF research in a whole new way. And so I'm really excited to have David here with us. David, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So David, you are the father of 2 daughters with CF, ages 14 and 8, and you're the co-chair of the Patient and Family Research Advisory Board, and you've been instrumental in the development of this Insight CF Research Project. So
Yes.
great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's an exciting project that we've just
Yeah.
launched here at NACFC this year.
So can you tell us a little bit about the project? What is
absolutely.
Insight CF?
So Insight CF is an initiative by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation to help get the CF community involved in research in a different way. And so the idea is that we are going to be taking submissions for ideas for research studies that can be completed using the CF patient registry. And so we have a website set up where we can take submissions from the community about things that they might want to see researched, and we'll take those and combine and put all those questions together and make sure that they're viable and good questions, and then we're going to put those questions back out to the community for them to vote on and prioritize and pick the handful of questions that they're most interested in seeing getting researched. And then the foundation will take, once we get those final few questions that the community has decided is most important to them, we will take and research those questions and get answers out to the community and publish those results out to the community on what they think is interesting to them.
I think this is so exciting and so cool for people. I'm sure people in the audience are going to be really excited to hear that they can help drive research questions. One thing you mentioned is that this research is being done using the patient registry. Can you talk a little bit about what the registry is?
Right. So, yeah, the registry is this amazing tool that the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has in place. And the way it works is the foundation gets consent from CF patients to gather their medical information. And the information is used personally for the patients, but it's also all the identifiable information is taken out of it and made available to researchers. So you can't take the information and identify someone in the data, but everyone's data is in there. So my daughter's data is in the registry, and it's collected through the centers, typically when they do a visit, do a clinical visit, and it's entered into this massive database that is a huge resource for research of all kinds being done for cystic fibrosis. So it's used by clinical research. It's used by academics and universities to do research about cystic fibrosis. And so it's a massive database of medical information about CF patients.
Yeah, this morning the plenary was all about the research done using the patient registry, and the
Right.
speaker talked about just how incredible it is that the CF community has consented to be a part of this incredible project, and the amazing advances that have come and using that information, how it really helps us understand CF and how it progresses. But can you talk a little bit about how research being done that's using the registry is different than the types of research that we heard about earlier today from Deepika and Heather?
Right. So the registry research is comparative research. The data already exists, and so people don't have to sign up and register to be part of a clinical trial. They're actually already participating just by volunteering and consenting to have their data collected and added to the registry. And so, so this research is done by comparing data sets and establishing trends and drawing conclusions about people's different medical conditions based on the data that's been being collected over the years about CF patients. And so it's most people are already, like I said, participating by consenting to have their data collected, but there's still amazing findings that can be drawn based on just the data itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we definitely saw that this morning, all of the different research that's been done on different infections. And
exactly.
So can you talk a little bit about how the Insight CF project is planning to engage the CF community? Get involved.
The whole point is for the community. So CF patients and families, caregivers, this is an opportunity for them to go out and have an idea, think about something that they might want to have research, and then go to our website and submit that to us. And it can be in however you'd like. So don't worry about the format or those types of things. Just submit your idea about something that you have a question about, something that you wish you had more data about, or something that you've wondered about medications or best practices or whatever it might be about CF care or anything. And we'll take that question and put it into our process that we're going to use to screen and filter those questions, and then again, like I said, put it back out to the community. Once we get a tight list of all our submissions, we'll put it back out to the community for them to vote on and prioritize the very most important questions to them.
So I understand you guys just launched a webpage on cff.org
Right.
where people can submit their questions. So that website is cff.org/insightcf.
Correct.
And you also have a Twitter handle? Or
We have
Twitter hashtag,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Hashtag, yes, you can follow us with hashtag InsightCF. The foundation will be providing information and updates on the project as we go. We're going to be collecting information. We're going to be collecting submissions for 3 months.
Okay.
And at the end, then we'll end the submission period. Then, like I said, we'll go through the questions, and in a month or so or two after that, we'll put all the final questions back out to a vote.
Mm-hmm. So we have the website pulled up, so maybe we can take a look at it really fast. There's some information, it looks like, here on the project.
Right.
And if people click on this blue button, it'll take you to a form to fill out with questions that you have.
Right. And it's a very simple form, and on back on the landing page, you can get a variety of information about. No worries.
There we go.
There we go. You can get a variety of information about the project itself, also some additional information about the registry, and like how to form a good question. There's a section about that, and then go through and then submit your question when really about anything. We'll take a question about anything, and this particular focus is on questions that we can answer using the registry. So that's what we will ultimately put back out to vote for the community. But really, we'll take any question, and if it doesn't fit with our project, we'll pass it on to the right people for consideration.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody living with this disease has questions in their mind that they've wanted answered.
Absolutely.
And what are the long-term goals of this project?
Okay, so the long-term goals are excuse me. So of course, the whole point is to get good data into the hands of CF patients and families so they can make data-driven decisions about their care. And so this is just the first iteration of what we hope to be a long project where we continue to gather questions, get other questions prioritized, and get them researched on a continual basis. So depending on how long it takes for the research to get done, we may do this every year or every other year, but we want to continue to provide and build this body of knowledge that the community can use to make well-informed decisions about their care.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as a father with 2 daughters that have CF, what does this project mean to you?
That's a great question. So it's super exciting to me, one, to have been, involved as just kind of a regular person, to be brought in by the foundation and help with this type of project. It's super exciting. But the reality is we live with CF day in and day out, and we have a unique perspective that we can offer. And so to have this opportunity that the foundation is putting value on the voice that I have and that the community has, and putting value on that and is wanting that voice to be heard, is really exciting. And it's such an opportunity for us to express our ideas, get those out, and have some real research done on the things that we think is important. Because I get asked questions all the time, about my daughter's care, I'm asked to make decisions, and there's so many times when I wish I had more information available to me to make a good decision, rather than just kind of trial and error some of these things, right? Yeah. And so that's what's so exciting is my voice can be heard, the voice of all the CF community can be heard, and this is just one of the first initiatives that the CF Foundation has going to hear the voice of the community and get us involved in research and the future of our care. So it's so exciting.
That's so incredible, and I'm sure that's going to resonate with the people in the audience. So we hope that you're submitting your questions to us so we can ask those of you now. And just one more time, let's go over the process of how people can submit their questions. I'm sure there's lots of people that have questions they know they're ready to submit.
Right.
So again, the website to go to is www.cff.org/InsightCF.
Right.
And if they want to follow you on Twitter, it's #InsightCF.
Right. So we do have an InsightCF handle, but the best way is to follow with the InsightCF hashtag, and follow the CF Foundation Twitter, because they'll be tweeting out updates and information about the project as it goes on.
Okay, great. So it looks like we have our first question. Do I need to be a scientist or have a science background to submit a question?
And absolutely not. That's the whole point, is we want to hear the experiences. What are they struggling with? What is the information that they need or that they're interested in? And we want to hear those questions so that we can potentially build a research project around that and get that question answered. But no, don't worry about trying to make it technical or make it sound anything other than just what you're interested in and what you have a question about.
Okay, great. Next question is, how will I know if my question is selected?
Well, that's a good question. So hopefully you'll see your question in when we put the questions back out to vote to the community. Hopefully you'll see your questions then, and you can vote on your own question, of course. But if you provide us with your email address when you submit your question is submitted, we will contact you and let you know that your question was submitted. And also, the other exciting aspect of this project is there may be an opportunity for the person or the people who submitted the question to be involved in the research process itself, and to be a part of the research team. So we encourage, it's optional, of course, but we encourage people to include their email address so we can contact them to get clarifying information or to notify them if their question was selected.
Awesome. The next question is, does the Insight CF project want certain types of questions?
Well, so again, the focus this particular project is going to be, we're going to be answering questions using the data in the CF registry. That doesn't mean if you have a great idea about a clinical trial or something like that, that we don't want it. We definitely want you to submit any type of question that you may have that the community thinks it might be of interest to be researched. The questions that we'll put back out to vote will be questions that we think can be answered using the registry data. But again, if it's not that type of question, we will still capture it and take it, and we'll pass it on to the appropriate teams, other areas in the foundation to look at. But so it's kind of a yes and no answer to that.
Yeah.
Yes, submit anything that you'd like, but the results that we'll be putting back out to vote for the community to prioritize will be questions that can be answered using the registry data.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's just good for us to know, too, what questions people have, even if it can't be answered using the registry.
Absolutely.
So another question is, what happens if my question is selected?
Okay, so if your question is selected as one of the handful of questions that is prioritized by the community, the question will either go to a research team to be researched, or the foundation will build a research team around the question to be able to answer it. And we hope to, every single question that we prioritize, which is going to be a handful, 3 to 5 questions, every single one of those questions will be researched, and we will publish those findings in the relevant journals and make this available to the community.
Awesome. Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you here. I think this project is so exciting, and I'm excited to follow it. And to those of you in the audience that are watching, or if you've just tuned in, today was our last community session from NACFC, and it was a really fantastic session where we learned about what's happening in drug development. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to the drug development pipeline, which is on cff.org. The URL for that is cff.org/pipeline. We also talked with Heather Hathorn about how to get involved in clinical trials. We heard this week at NACFC that there's going to be over 50 clinical trials in CF research, so that's a really exciting space. You can learn more about those trials and participation by going to the clinical trial finder. That's cff.org/finder. And then we just wrapped up a session with David Hansen, which was so exciting, talking about a brand new project to get questions from the CF community that they want answered about the treatment and care of CF. And you can learn more about this and submit your questions at InsightCF. So this is www.cff.org/InsightCF. So we hope that you'll submit your questions and check out the websites. And hopefully we'll see you next year for more Facebook Lives. Thanks.